this to switch the slides. Yeah, so it works.
Daarvoor naast Wouter wel zitten.
Good morning. Goedemorgen and welcome. That was my Dutch contribution for today. Was that okay? Oh, okay. Now, good morning and welcome to the Keylane Thriving in the Future Landscape of Life and Pension 2025 event. So, on behalf of Keylane, I'm very delighted to welcome you all to Amsterdam for a full day of knowledge sharing, networking. So it will be a really, really good day today. We will explore how the industry is evolving, but also how we use technology, innovation, trust as a way we serve clients. We have more than 100 confirmed guests for today, so I'm very much delighted to see that. We are guests attending across 45 different companies, both in terms of clients and valuable business partners. And we are actually also represented across 6 countries. So we are from the Netherlands, all the way to Denmark, Belgium, UK, Norway, and also all the way from the Dutch Caribbean. So this is a truly international setup today. This is the program for today. I will try to make it fairly short. We have a pretty comprehensive and compact program. But we will be joined by Leon, our Managing Director for the Keylane Life and Pension in a short minute to do a welcome and an update on where we are today as a business. And then we will have Thomas Krogh Jensen on the stage as the keynote from CEO from the Copenhagen FinTech. And then we have DreamPlan to tell us a bit about their digital advisory transformation. And then we will have some break out in the atrium. And there will be served coffee, drinks, tea, all the way through the day in the bar. So help yourself. But we have some really exciting speakers and sessions throughout the day. And then at 12:30, we will have a lunch from 12:30 to 1:30. And then after lunch, we'll go out to the breakout sessions. You can scan the coasters out there where you can get the event plan, so you can see the assigned rooms for the different breakout sessions as well. So make sure to do that. Yes. And in the breaks or during the breaks, we have this marketplace out in the atrium where you will have the different Keylane experts that can showcase a lot of different features and products, all the way from digital engagement to financial planning, etc. So that's a good way to network, but also take a look and explore the marketplace that we have set up out there. And lunch will be served also in the atrium. And then make sure or be aware that in the breakout that I showed before, we have some roadmap or user groups breakout also. That's mainly for clients and users. And then validate your parking before leaving. Remember to do that. Good. So first up is Leon Deloof, our Managing Director of Keylane Life and Pension. So without further ado, welcome Leon.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, also welcome on my behalf. Great to have you all here. Today is the 2nd of October, 3/4 of the year done, 3 more months to go. And we're in the middle of a lot of very complex and highly visible projects with many of you. 3 months to go, tight deadlines, we're all on our edge to make it work. It's also already a bit of time to reflect for us, also because we've now been almost a year with our new investor, Pollen Street Capital. So when we look at the year so far, we see a lot of positive momentum that we want to share with you. Keylane Life and Pension, we're growing, we're financially healthy. We're by now a big company, we would say. Even just the life and pension part of Keylane is more than 500 people. And for you, that means that we are a stable, robust partner. We have the scale to support many of you. We have the scale to invest in our people, in our platforms. And so we did. We've hired more colleagues. We now touched the 500 mark for only the life and pension part of Keylane in Netherlands, in Denmark, in India. We hired many new IT experts, actuarians, consultants, analysts, so more people to serve you. We are now serving more than 60 customers in all our geographies, and also ranging from modest to very, very large. And all these categories are equally important to us, also important to emphasize to you. Last year we invested more than 10 million in our platforms. And this year we are spending at least the same amount. And this is only what we as Keylane are investing purely by ourselves. And we also have many initiatives together with some of you, sort of in co-investment mode, where we also further enhance the platform and build new functionality. And so the scale and the financial health that we have enables us to do this and to serve you better. We have a large ecosystem of partners, again, many in the room here, companies to help you take decisions, help us and you to run projects, to provide additional expertise, tools, modules. So the fact that it's not just Keylane, there's a whole network of companies helping us, helping you. We are on track in the Dutch pension reform. I'll tell a bit more about that later. And we're also in the middle of further international expansion. And I'll go into that as well later. But first, I also want to introduce a few new colleagues in the leadership team. Because with a new investor, there's new energy, new momentum, new plans. And with that also comes additional talent. Starting from the left, we have installed a supervisory board with a number of high caliber experts from the industry. Marco Limena has a very long international or global history at Microsoft and several other companies. So he joined as our chairman of the supervisory board. Fabio De Ferrari will join us later this year. He has a lot of experience in the insurance industry. One of his roles has been COO of Allianz Germany, responsible for all IT, all operations in Germany. So he brings a lot of industry knowledge and network. And on the full-time management board, if I start at the bottom, Nelson Petracek has joined us recently as our CTO. That is a new role. As a technology company, we, of course, find it very important that we take the right technological decisions, architecture decisions, that we make sure that our software process is super, super professional. He comes from companies like TIBCO, Informatica, has been CTO there. He will be on stage at the end of this morning in one of the presentations, so then you'll have the opportunity to see him and meet him over drinks. Lucas van Grunsven and myself will remain responsible for the two business lines. So I will still be end responsible towards all of you for our service, for our projects, for our products. Philip Ledere joined us in July as our new CFO, also CFO for all of Keylane. You see there's more integration now in Keylane. We still have business lines, but we're operating more and more as one company and creating synergies. And then yesterday, as most of you read in the press release, John Reinders joined as our new CEO. He also comes from some reputable, companies with a high reputation. And well, he will be our overall CEO leading all of Keylane. John, I'd like to give you some time to introduce yourself to us.
Thank you, Leon. Very good morning to all of you. And first of all, a big thank you for taking the time to spending a whole day here together with us. Very much appreciated. I couldn't be more excited to be here today. Today for me is day 2. Yesterday was day 1, so I had my onboarding. Like the rest of the colleagues, like Leon said, we're investing heavily in new people, so I was part of a big group, more than, I think, 16 new Keylaners who joined yesterday, now representing over 42 nationalities in the company. Isn't that amazing? And I was one of them. And today, day 2, when Leon said we have a very cool customer event on day 2, I didn't hesitate for 1 second, and I said I want to be there to get to know as many as possible of you today. Looking at my gray hairs, you can see that I spent quite a couple of years. I spent 25 years already in the tech and services industry, most of the time working with mission-critical products and platforms, developing those, serving those to the customers, working with large professional organizations like yours. I've been following Keylane already for more than 6 years, and always been, on one hand, impressed by the journey that they have gone through. If you go through the whole life journey of Keylane, it's amazing where they started, where we are today. And at the same time, I see so much potential on the foundation that is in place in Keylane to go to the next level together with all of you. I think what Keylane really differentiates them versus any other player in the market is that on one hand, there's this deep expertise and passion for the industry that we play in. Like Leon said, by now over 500 passionate colleagues working in the life and pension domain only. And on the other hand, real deep expertise in software. And that is a unique combination. We've just been talking about it, both the domain knowledge and the deep knowledge on developing reliable and modern software. And that at a scale that allows us to continue to invest, modernize, and keep up with, I think, what is one of the most exciting times to be in this domain in many decades that have been. So I can already commit that Keylane will continue to invest, will continue to focus deeply on the markets where we already have a big share, a lot of customers that rely on us, while also expanding into new geographies. That is a statement that is backed by our owner, our investor, who also brings that unique mix. There's not many investors who both know the industry and software development. And Pollen Street, our new owner, is super specialized. They only do investments in the financial services industry and deeply into software. So I think it's best of both worlds that bring together. Again, thank you for coming here. I hope to meet as many as you as possible, get feedback, learn from all of you to see where we together in a good partnership can go to the next level. So have a wonderful day. Back to you, Leon.
Thanks, John. Right. Good. Let me carry on. So next, our platform strategy. We continue to focus on our 3 main policy administration systems: Plexus, Lifetime, LeanApps. These are all 3 strategic platforms for us, long-term viable. We're investing in all of them. They have a long future, let it be no doubt. All of these are end-to-end platforms. Our philosophy is that you are best supported by a system that supports you end-to-end across all the life cycle events of your customers, from quoting, onboarding, live events, disbursements, the whole thing. Integrated end-to-end platforms. We also serve them in a SaaS fashion. So we don't only provide software, not only hosting, but we take entire responsibility for operations, releases, availability, support. That's also our philosophy. We think that to unburden companies like you, that is the best approach. There's always variants, but mostly that is our strategy that we work towards. Each of the platforms has its own specific user group. Plexus is aimed at medium to large companies, modern pension schemes, international. That is the one where we also going into new countries. Lifetime focused on the Netherlands, mid-sized companies, self-administrating funds, new products, but also DB and the FTK products. And LeanApps focused on individual life products and on certain employer pensions. So 3 different target groups, long-term future, still being invested in all 3. On top of that, several modules, portals, interfaces, financial advisory platform that you'll see later on. And we're actually planning to integrate and blend those to really make an end-to-end journey also on the portal and the user interface side. Specifically for the Dutch attendees today, we are in the middle of the pension reform, the WTP. Our message is we are on track in all 3 of these platforms. So all 3 platforms have FPR, have SPR, are live in the market. So in the life and pension market, ASR, Allianz, Atora, Skilden, they're selling new contracts, they're converting existing employers into typically FPR products. Centraal Beheer will join early next year. And ASR, together with ASR, we even developed functionality that once an employer agrees on going to FPR and all the conditions, and we push the button, the whole conversion is more or less automatic. So we're developing a lot of features there. And on the pension fund side, with TKP, we are live with the first fund, several others planned very soon. P&O is live with FPR, and a number of self-administering funds that are on Lifetime are also planned to go onto the WTP end of next year. So our message is we're ready, we're on track, we're scalable, given the size of our company, and if needed, because we also feel a social responsibility to society that this pension transition has to succeed. We're also willing and able to help others even at this stage of the process. We will stick to software. We are a SaaS vendor. We are not a BPO provider. We will not. That is definitely not our strategy. And we will partner with anybody who needs help or who wants to have some support to go through this transition with us. International. So we are looking into surrounding countries, Northwest Europe, mainly Nordics and Benelux. And in the Nordics, we recently agreed with one of the top 5 players that they will move to our Plexus platform in about 1.5 years from now. We're in the middle of the project. We're making the system suitable for the Norwegian market and for their specific products and customers. And so to us, that's very exciting. That's another country on the map. We also know that some of the other players are struggling, so we're keeping a keen eye on that market. We're also tentatively looking at Sweden and Finland. Nothing immediate at the moment, but that is in our focus area. And in Belgium, we are quite far with a number of discussions. We've done POCs. One of our products is being made ready for the Belgian market. So yeah, we're also expanding our scope geographically. And the UK, we're taking first steps. We have a few first conversations, but especially with our investor being a UK company, that also seems logical. So closing off, because I quickly have to hand over to the next speaker. Main priorities for Keylane, number 1, it's not on the page. Number 1 is finish the current projects, serve the current customers with all you need. But looking ahead, AI will be a major priority for us. You'll see it in other presentations today. International expansion, multi-cloud strategy. We were on the journey to fully migrate to public cloud, but yeah, due to all sorts of recent developments, you can imagine that not all customers are keen on public cloud, even though we say that there's enough measures to counter that, but still we understand that there might be different opinions. So we have a multi-cloud offering where the choice is up to you, but there is a migration path to public cloud. And adaptability, as I said, front end, UX, integrating portals, providing more to the customers of our customers, your customers. So those are top priorities. You'll see more of it today. And with that, I hand over to you.
Thank you, Leon. And thank you, John, for setting the stage so well. And with that, we will move straight into our keynote for today. Thomas Krog Jensen, CEO of Copenhagen FinTech. Welcome.
And my clicker?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. My name is Thomas, and thank you so much, first and foremost, for inviting me to speak here today. Just to be, because I'm already 15 minutes behind, and I haven't even started yet. So, so give me a wave behind, when you want me to wrap up, or if I need to catch up on good. And then I'll click through the many slides here. So first of all, I'll skip the long presentation. Don't worry, it wasn't prepared like that. But I'll skip the long presentation about Copenhagen FinTech, just for you to know. We are an organization that is Copenhagen-based, hence the name. Very much Northern European focused, and then with a global network of financial institutions ranging from Japan, Singapore, India, where I'm going this weekend, for a big FinTech conference, Europe and US. So we have a pretty good overview of what is happening in the business. And funnily enough, I myself actually grew up in life and pension. I started back in the 90s in one of the biggest Danish pension funds, hence the gray hair here back in the 90s. The technology at that point, when I was advising customers, that was a pen and a paper. Having a conversations with them in their home, asking them what happens if you die, what happens if you get sick, and how much would you like when you when you retire, and then you draw out the graphs and stuff like that. 10 years later, we moved on technology-wise, so then we started introducing the portable PCs, and then I was equipped with a big handbag with printer, mobile phone, PCs. It was almost like you moved into the with the client. So I ended up as spending 17 years in that industry, heading up all of our advisors and some of the product development and stuff like that. Then I moved on to Aon, which is probably very familiar to many of you here, heading up our business in the Danish market, including IT innovation and what we were doing in that space, and then moved on being an EVP in Nordea Life and Pension, the third largest pension fund at that point in the Nordics. So I, even though it's been 10 years, I think I still remember a little bit of and understand a little bit of what's going on in your business. So with that background, let's try to move in. What I'm going to do today, and you will take deep dives into all the things you have your hands on in your everyday. So I will try to look a little bit of what's going on more on a global scale. Very much European focused though. 30,000 feet high up, and say where is the world moving and how does that impact the industry when it comes to predominantly regulation, technology, and a little bit on geopolitics, because that is so intertwined. And then talk a little bit about how we see the industry moving forward in the next 10 years. So let me start with trying to set the scene. This is from my first visit this year to Davos. A few of the pictures that I took when I arrived here. I got out of the train, and then I meet one of our companies. We sit in a big house with around 50 companies that do FinTech in the middle of Copenhagen. We've had around 400 to 500 companies sitting physically with us and interacted with more than 1,000. We're non-for-profit, a public-private partnership, 25 people that has deep sector experience, and do everything from thought leadership work like what we're doing now to acceleration, incubation, investing, and funding research. And I got off here, and the first thing I saw was this massive presence of all the American tech giants and AI. The second thing I meet is one of our companies that has to do with crypto, and that was just at the point where Trump launched his meme coin. Some of you might have heard about that, right? Insanely rich, his meme coin, everyone was talking about it, so everything was AI or Trump, and we were laughing a little bit about his meme coin. Yeah, that's fine. And 9 months later, what is not a meme coin, but 9 months later, we are basically in a world where we had our big conference last week, where we had 2,000 people in Copenhagen, and during that conference, a number of European banks basically launched their stablecoin, which is efficiently like it's a cryptocurrency. And Swift just announced there. So what we thought and the conversations we had 9, 12 months ago are vastly different from the conversations we have now. Just when I say something that fills up the conversations a lot with our financial institutions, especially in the Nordics, is digital sovereignty. I had none of those conversations 12 months ago. Almost none. So the big disruptor here, besides AI, is the good Mr. Trump. I'm not going to talk so much more about that. When we see the forces that impact the industry and the future of life and pension, there's a lot of things going on here at the same time. And that's why I think it's the most exciting time to actually be in financial services. Definitely also, as part of that, of course, the life and pension industry, because there is profound change coming our way. And trying to make sense of it is the most exciting thing right now, if you ask me. There's a lot of different, of course, when you look at what's impacting the products and services, our business models, our capabilities, there's customer expectations, different technologies, of course, regulation, that has always been a big driver, maybe the biggest driver. But enter the scene is also something most of us haven't really considered before, the geopolitical aspect of running the business. The macroeconomics, of course, has always been an issue, and then also, of course, competition. So let's try to talk a little bit about this. And another way of looking at it, and the three kind of groupings that I will try to cover today, is the technology aspect, the geopolitical, a little bit on that, and I think an excellent example is actually from this week, where the EU came out and say they want to block the US big tech companies from access to data from FIDA. It's a very clear example of how these things begin to come together, right? So, and then of course the regulation and what it is that drives that. What is it basically we need to fix as a region going forward that will also impact the financial industry immensely. I also took this one. So what are the biggest emerging risks? And I think many of them you are probably already looking into. There's 2 years, there's 10 years. A lot of them in 10 years is going to be around sustainability. Talk a little bit more about that. And the others are also very relatable to technology and some of the risks when it comes to technology. Last but not least, of course, digital is everything we do. Usually some get a little bit provoked when I say it, but most financial institutions, including life and pension industry, life and pension companies, very little happen if we don't make it happen through technology. So in reality, these are big technology companies with a license to run either banking or life and pension or insurance or whatever. So this is, of course, super important. And just one of the graphs here shows how fast, when ChatGPT came out, how fast they grew compared to some of the other platforms. This is, I don't need to tell you, you know everything about it. This is moving so fast. So what we will talk about here, a little bit about why is it the perfect storm right now. how is the regulation, the technology, and a bit of the geopolitics, how are they coming together. Bit on demographics, because that is super interesting, of course, in the life and pension industry. We recently done a report because I think what is increasingly harder is to say, where is the world moving? Where is the world moving in 2 years, in 5 years, or maybe even in 10 years? That's almost like insane to start predicting that. But what we wanted to do is, and we did that together with PA Consulting, to create 4 different scenarios, all plausible, for where the world could potentially move and how you potentially should strategize around that if you're a financial institution. So I'm going to do a little bit of 2 examples from those 4 scenarios. Talk a little bit about innovation and partnerships, because that's the core of what we do, the capabilities needed to thrive in that world, and then I don't think there's going to be time for questions, but let's see how we are on time when we are 2.7. All right, is that good? Hopefully, yes, good. So let's talk a little bit about regulation and technology. So the 2 big initiatives, if we talk about on the EU level, we have the EU Green Deal and we have the EU Digital Decade, and probably many of you are familiar with these 2 initiatives. This one is to say a lot of what will be hitting the financial industry, and especially actually life and pension industry, is this problem. This is the single biggest problem we need, maybe not the single, one of the big problems we need to fix in the EU. This shows public from scratch US companies versus EU companies that is less than 50 years old. I think most of you know the name that is here. These names we cannot even see. I think Denmark has one, that is DSV, a logistics company. I actually don't know if the Netherlands are represented in that little lump there. I have put in a Swedish flag, and that's because 4 of those companies are Swedish. But this is one of the problems that we absolutely need to fix. Draghi came out with his report. He pointed exactly towards that. Some of the ways to fix that is the Capital Market Union, now rebranded as an Investment and Savings Union, to make capital flow across Europe. The other graph here is showing the access to risk capital that is available for startups. And of course, this shows there is such a big gap. And needless to say, if OpenAI probably wouldn't have happened in Europe. There's simply not enough capital available. And what they are doing, what they are trying to do now is, of course, to also make some of that capital that is available, among other places in pension funds, available for companies to scale faster, better, bigger, and so on and so forth. Because we simply need to catch up with the US, we simply need to catch up, of course, with China. So this is a lot of the legislation, regulation that is coming out can be tied back to we need to be more innovative, we need to fund our companies, we need to grow bigger companies, and we need to do it fast. This is, of course, a geopolitical also issue. Then the other one is sustainability and ESG. I don't think I need to tell you that. Many of you will probably also be working with that on the product side, on the investment side, or in the conversations with your clients. I love the quote here from Nicolai Tangen, the CEO of Norges Bank, that we think ESG is as political as gravity. It is not political. It's a thing we need, of course, to fix, and I think that we in Europe also are very aware of. A few of the regulations that you're very well aware of course, open finance being one of them. That is and will be a game changer for the industry when that happens. We have been moving from open banking that was hitting the transactional data, the banking data first, and now we're talking about open finance, banking, wealth management, investments, insurance, all the data that I as a customer produce should be given available to third parties. I know the industry is probably a little bit depending on countries and where you sit on this, trying to say, we shouldn't be so fast, we should probably wait a bit, and so on and so forth. It will happen, and it should happen, and it's one of the things that probably will increase both transparency and competition and capital flows around Europe. And the sooner we begin to work with it, the sooner we begin to figure out there's a lot of opportunities in open finance, also for the established sector, that of course is scratching right now and trying to figure out, what do we do with that? How do we act in a world and in an environment where we need to give away data? And this is the next push. The next push after this is the open data economy, where we don't only look for finance, but we look at many other of the industries that are mentioned here, whether it's health, energy, telecom, retail, transportation, and so on and so forth. So very exciting, huge impact on the industry together with some of the other stuff. Some of you might also have heard about the eIDAS, the digital identity, a thing that we, at least in the Nordics, I'm not completely sure how it works in many of the other European countries, other than I think the Nordics here have a pretty good system. Everything we do is done with our digital ID system. I used to joke a little bit about it's actually so digital, so unfortunately I have been through a divorce. The way we do it is that we log on. I say, with my ID, digital ID, I say I want to get a divorce. And then I get a mail in my inbox 2 minutes after and say, okay, you now have 3 months to reconsider. And then 3 months after, I get another mail saying, done, it's fine. Everything is digital end to end, even when you want to do that. It's not completely the same when you want to get remarried. That is still done face to face. But anyways, it is one of the biggest drivers for digitalization, is actually the digital ID. And we're now looking into the EU eIDAS, where we will all have an EU wallet. And that wallet, as you can see here, it's a national ID. And what does it hold? It holds driver's license. It can hold diplomas, your insurance information, probably your life and pension, also travel payments, whatever. And that will be a game changer and accelerate, hopefully, also digitalization across Europe, which we need to have in order to be competitive. Back to some of the previous slides. All right. So, and then last but certainly not least, some of you might have heard about the digital euro, something that is still being discussed. And right now, I think there's around, as it says here, around 130 countries. Trump started a wave, right? He wanted the stable coins. Europe said, no, we don't want that. We want our own sovereign currency, the euro. It needs to be digital. And if you look at the tech stack, and one of the reasons also here, at least when you look at it in the Nordics, most of the tech stack in the Nordics, including for most of the life and pension company, is, the cloud technologies, of course, is American. The payments infrastructure is American. The AI infrastructure is also American. So we basically sit, and there's a lot of discussion on that without me saying what is right or wrong or good or bad. It's just a fact, and the EU now saying, at least the payment structure, we probably need an alternative to American stablecoins. So one of the big issues and one of the big themes at our conference last week was definitely the digital euro. And why is that happening? This is Helen. Helen is the team lead for the functional requirements in the ECB, the European Central Bank, that is designing right now how the digital euro should look like. This is her slide, where she's talking about why is it we're doing it. And as it says here, it's about tackling geopolitical challenges. It's providing protection and stability. It's spurring innovation that Europe needs, programmable money as an alternative to the stablecoins, and it's strengthening of the euro. So that's the why to the digital euro. So another thing that will also happen, a gigantic technological project for Europe, and of course, something that also is going to hit your companies at some point. When I think it's still, for some, it's still a question if. And that can definitely, I think there's some banks here that don't think it's a really good idea because it's also messing their basic business model a little bit. But it looks like it's gaining traction. All right. And then last but not least, if we look at technologies, the big thing everyone is talking about is, of course, AI and how it will transform the industry. I'm just going to take a short break here and just take a little bit of order. How am I doing on time? Okay. Give me a signal when I'm running out. All right. Let's talk a little bit about how it's going to be challenging. So for most financial institutions, we still have a little bit, and I say we, I'm still feeling a little bit like I'm part of the industry. We still have a bit running on mainframes, at least in Denmark. I don't know how it is here, but at least in Denmark, there's still a little bit running on mainframes still. And we're still struggling with exiting that, right? We're still trying to figure out what does it really mean to have financial services, and also on in that also, of course, life and pension products. How does that really work in an e-commerce kind of setting? How do we really do that? When it comes to cloud, we're transitioning and we're trying to exit the mainframe and go into cloud. So we also a little bit in that process still. And then suddenly generative AI or AI wave hits us, and we then need to figure out what does that mean. And I think we can definitely say this is gonna be a game changer, and we've only seen a bit of what it's gonna mean. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. We have the obvious use cases, and I know some of the breakout session, I know some of the other speakers will be talking more about that. I think where I get really excited and where we see a lot of innovation, and especially where one of the other speakers or some of the other speakers from DreamPlan is gonna touch upon, is of course this one, personalized financial advice, and the hyper-personalized financial advice. I think that's where it really gets interesting, where we finally can get to the point where we can create a digital experience that is fitting for me as a person, not as a type or a segment or whatever, but for me where I am using my data and my understanding of my context. I think this is where it gets really interesting. I recently had a conversation that was on the banking, maybe they're different, where they said, yeah, Thomas, that's fine, but there's always gonna be personal advice. There's always gonna be the need to have a conversation with a human, because financial services, banking, advice, that is so complex. So there's always gonna be a need to talk to a person. So, and as the article here states, we now have AI that can design chips and detect cancer and do a lot of different things. I think designing chips is like on the same level as like financial advice, I would say. Probably complexity-wise. So I think we need to leave, and probably you all already did that all in this room, but at least in the conversation I have, there's still someone stuck in the world where this is very complex. People are the only one that can do it, and there will always be need for personal advisors to have face-to-face conversations. I think we need to challenge that notion, and we'll get back to that a little bit also when we talk about how generations are changing now. This is also just to say, I think when it comes to especially AI, this shows you a little bit the number one industries where AI is predicted to hit the most. You can see here, there's banking, there's insurance, there's capital markets. I'm sure life and pension industries are included in those numbers somewhere, right? So financial services, when it comes to the biggest impact from AI is basically on top here. It's also, and that's also why financial services is so important in this transformation, it's also the industry that is investing the most outside of the tech sector itself. So you guys is the industry that is investing most in new technology. So what this means, what this means is, and this whole AI transformation, I think the interesting part here is probably most of you in some capacity, either at work or privately, use some kind of ChatGPT, right? How many of you have changed your habits when it comes to using Google? How many of you are predominantly now using ChatGPT, Perplexity, or whatever to search? There's a few. No, more hands. Yeah, okay. So around 2/3 at least, in a relatively short period of time, got used to, instead of Googling, pressing links, trying to figure out, answers to questions yourself, got used to opening whatever tool it is, if it's Gemini, Perplexity, ChatGPT or whatever, and just simply state your intent and then get an answer. So what this is fundamentally changing our way of thinking here is you're moving from the attention economy, where if I run a business, a life or pension company or whatever I do, I do Google ads, I need to be SEO because I need to be high up on the rankings, so they click my link, all these different kind of, the very e-commerce kind of mindset. How do I get users into my platform, and so on and so forth. To another world where it's the intention, where I as a customer, as a client, as a person, will be much more expressing my intent with what I want to do, and then I will get an answer back. And that's a fundamental change that also will affect and impact what I want from my advisor, my financial advisor, what I will want from my self-service solution, because I might not be an expert in financial products and services, but in most cases I will be able to state an intent and expect something in return. And that fundamental shift is going to be very exciting to see how financial services will adapt to. And you see some of it here. So this also very much plays into what many of you probably already are looking into, the agentic AI, and basically being able to, at some point, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, definitely, if you ask me, in 3 or 5 years, actually be in a world where I have a 24/7, 365 financial advisor running, and that will also be able to execute on my behalf on decisions based on me stating an intent. What is it I want done? And then it does it for me. This is the world we need to adapt to. And I think that raises some strategic questions here. What I try to kind of visualize here is that I, as a client, will have an intent. In this case, if you look to the corner here, I want to buy a pair of sneakers, and potentially I could have several agents running for me, making decisions for me. I could have a pension agent, insurance agent, investments, payments, whatever. So through my intent, I can enable them, and now it gets really fun, right? Because I can also have intelligent money, whether it's a stable coin or a digital euro, money with a little bit of code where it actually automatically executes on my intent, and ask it to do, again, 24/7, 365, ask it to buy a pair of sneakers or buy the insurance or whatever. I have 3 minutes left. Yeah, okay. So can I get 5 more? Because I think I had 45, and now I have half an hour. Good, okay. So this is where it gets really, really interesting. That is where that fundamentally changes and what that means. So another thing is, of course, what is underlying that is that we need to get our data in order. We have, when I was in the business, and one of the projects I was running is how do we actually hit people with the different life events, right? We want to be relevant when they are married. We want to be relevant when they're divorced. We want to be relevant when they buy a car, or like whatever it is. Whatever is happening in the different ages, we want to be relevant. And we were very good at doing that on PowerPoint. Very good. And some of you laugh here. And then we carried the PowerPoints down to IT, and then they said, yeah, but we're busy fixing all different other kind of stuff, right? And that's not going to happen now, and where are we going to get the data from, and blah, 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 blah. So I still think my old PowerPoint deck from when we were doing that project and mapping out customer journeys, as probably many of you have done, it lives very well on paper. I haven't really seen anyone execute it very well on. But we need to be able to do that now. We need to show that we are relevant at the right time, because we can, one thing has happened in the past, that of course is data driven, what is happening now, but we will also be able to kind of predict, so you as a person with these, based on that data, what is your needs going forward also. So both look at the past, the present, and also predict where this is going. So things you need to consider. I will skip that in the light of time and move on. This one you probably already know. This one is interesting because this shows a little bit the fastest growing jobs. This is from a World Economic Forum survey that just came out in the beginning of the year. And if you look at what are the fastest growing jobs, then big data specialist, but number 2 is fintech engineer. I was very surprised when I saw that. And when we can discuss what is that actually, but number 2 globally, and that is also showing a little bit about, what is the talent challenge we as an industry is facing. This is the future talent. This is what you as an industry need to also attract. Fintech engineer, financial technology engineer. All right, let's look a little bit of that. How much do I, 3 minutes now? Okay, now I'm stressing. This is a little bit about demographics. Very short story. This is my 2 sons. The one is 22, as it says here. The other one is 16. The 22-year-old got his savings out. We have a children's savings. And then suddenly, one evening when we were sitting, he said, Dad, so you're doing this fintech stuff, right? I just got my money out, so I just invested a bit here. And of course that, it went very quiet. And then I said, okay, so what did you invest in? So he said, so I talked to my guys, and I invested a bit in crypto. And okay, I said, exciting. Sounds interesting. I said, what else did you do? He said, I then asked some other guys, and then we invested in the, he actually said we, it was his money, but he said we, invested in ETFs that is sustainable. And at that point I was ready to kind of, who are you? I cannot recognize you. I have no idea what, because we usually don't have those kind of conversations, right? So the point for me for telling that very quick story, there's a little bit less, but I'll cut it short. The point of me telling that story is he didn't even consider once calling his bank. Not even once. For him, and that is going to be, I think, a challenge for some of you also. It was not so much, it was not that he deselected his bank. They were simply not a choice for him. They didn't own any real estate in his mind. They were his card when he pays. That was the real estate in his mind that they owned. And I think for some of you that are also on the consumer market and where people are not, it's not mandatory to choose your products as part of an employer or whatever, you need to think about the real estate you own in the heads of those generations that are to come. Otherwise, you will lose generations. And he's just an example, and the sample size is small. But the other one is, of course, that there's a great wealth transfer on the way. I will cut that short. You will get the slides afterwards because now I'm flipping through quite fast. And of course, that is something that is hitting the industry, and you need to understand where money moves, how they move, and what preferences they come with, and how much real estate in those new generations you actually own. All right. We published this report around 4 worlds where we take all of these different trends and say there's not one way the world can move based on this. There's actually 4 different ways, depending on what we believe in when it comes to an integrated Europe or a fragmented Europe, whether it's state dominance or if we move towards a bigger platform play. I will skip these and then go a little bit forward to the innovation and partnerships, because I think where we were 10 years ago when I started in the industry, it was very much about fintech is going to eat our lunch, and there's not going to be banks or pension companies. That was, of course, ridiculous. Those of us that has been in the business knew that it's not going to end up like that. But what there is a hell of a lot of innovation going on that established financial players can benefit from, look at, learn from, engage with in different ways. These are different maps of that ecosystem. What we see in the Nordics is very much these 3 things. How wealth is the fundamental notion of wealth, what it is, what assets we invest in, how we invest, and what tools we use when we invest and save. That is very much being disrupted. The whole space of SMEs, I'm not going to go so deep into that, and then the area of sustainability. That's where we see some interesting stuff happening. For you guys, it's all about what to build yourself, what to partner with. For instance, Keylane is a good example when it comes to that. And then, is there anything we need to buy, right? So a lot of where the world is going is, of course, we don't need to buy, to build everything, also don't buy, but we don't need to buy everything ourselves. The world is moving so fast, the use cases are so many. There will be someone out there that are about to solve that problem that you are looking to tackle. It's out there, it's just a question of finding it. And I'll skip through this and say, some of the capabilities needed here is very interesting here. We are moving into a world where it becomes so important to be able to connect the outside with the inside. So trying to make sense of all the different stuff that is going on, whether it's technology regulation, or the geopolitical situation, or all the different startups, all the different technologies, how they're coming together. So the thing around connecting the outside with the inside. Collaboration, partnerships, so important. Partnership, I don't talk to any financial institution that doesn't have partnerships very high up on the agenda. And last but not least, something that we used to see as a pretty fluffy term, curiosity. That's a hardcore skill in order to do the 2 first things. In order to connect, in order to collaborate, you need to be curious. And I'm just going to go back one thing, because there's one thing that is a fundamental prerequisite for making that work, and that is psychological safety. In order for making innovation happen, in order for people to be curious and connect the outside and so on and so forth that is that we as managers, leaders, organizations manage to create psychological safety. And with that and with the famous words of this guy, never stop asking questions and seeking answers. Curiosity fuels progress. At least from the 45 minutes, I'm 6 minutes early on, so I think I got caught up a little bit. So I think that was my take on a little bit of trends, regulation, technology, where the world is moving, and some of the important questions you probably need to face or start a conversation about in your organizations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas. Feel free to engage with Thomas during the breaks and the networking sessions afterwards. So now we will move straight on to Simon and Christian from DreamPlan, also following up on something that Thomas spoke about regarding digital transformation on advisory.
I think
So welcome.
Imagine being able to actually have your gray hair as a proof of experience in this sector, right? That would be nice. I know somebody here feels with me. So I want to start with what Thomas actually pointed to. So the shift from attention to intention economy. The way we really wanted to create digital customer journeys from all the PowerPoints that was made strategically and things like that. And we basically looked into that and figured out how do we bring the capability of creating these customer journeys within the financial sector to the business instead of being owned by IT development, so that they could build them themselves. So we actually built this no-code tool that can do it. We really want to demo it, so at one point I'm going to run down there and I'm going to demo it live because that's fun, right? It's fun to build. It's almost, we're from Denmark, it's almost like doing Legos. The reason why we are here is, of course, that we are not in a sector where it's simple, these things are simple. So there's a lot of ready-made APIs that are just out of the box and you just drag and drop them and things like that. But we need to get to the calculation for the customer in the customer journey, right? So with the intention, we actually need to get down to the hardcore stuff. And that's why we have actually made a lot of ready-made APIs on top of OPEX. And I think, at least that's why they wanted us to come today. Yeah? Yes, but I'm trying to get it to work. There it was, yes. Hello.
I think if you take, I'm Christian, this is Simon.
I once had hair.
Yeah, that's true. I still have mine for a while. And I'm the head of external relations, you're the CCO and founder. And if you take the next slide, so we go way back. Let's see if it works. But and the next slide again.
Yeah, we're just gonna, we're in between you guys and the call.
AI can be used for a lot of stuff. So in the airport, I tried to say, okay, take these pictures and then, I don't know what that is, doesn't matter, but anyway, and try, because Simon and I met each other actually before we met our current wives, so we go way, way back. We actually were consultants together back when Simon had hair, so that's what I tried to put up on the slide here. And what we did a lot of, Thomas, you took the point away, where are you, Thomas? But you took the point away from us, right? But we did a lot of slideware. And we did digital transformations. We also, I think we had some of the slides were really, really good, and some of the advice was really, really good, but we encountered the same issue. Every time we left the company, when we came back 6 months after, it was like, oh, we love the project. It just hasn't happened yet. So a lot of stuff was in the drawers, so that's how it started, and that's fundamentally what we then want to really change. And that is, with a question, how can we create human-friendly, future-proof customer journeys without compromising on speed, security, or compliance? Because a lot of the stuff that you saw in Thomas's talk is sort of pointing towards the future, but it's also, I think, even on the slide that I think was AI generated with Jarvis, it had made a mistake, right? It said 965 days, and I think that's also part of it. When you use AI, you better check it, because it tries its best, but it's the best assistant I've ever had, because you can then tell them, you say, this is very, very bad. And it's like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I'll try better, right? So best assistant I ever had. But again, the fact that when we do financial advice, we don't want something where there may be a couple of very big mistakes in there. We don't want that. So what we try to do is to say, and that's why we really, really like the collaboration with Keylane and with getting all the way down to a calculation that is deterministic, all the way down to a calculation where we know there's no mistakes. And then it's actually interesting, what is the future of having some of the softer dialogues around finance with an AI, where we are more accepted in data collection, in a lot of things where can actually help the user get it right. But try to take the next one. This is Frederik. This is his second job. He's doing an onboarding for pension, and it's his second job. He basically just had one. He knows everything that he wants to do with his pensions. He's already had the 1 hour and a half with the first advisor. The second time, he just doesn't need 1 hour and a half. Maybe he needs half an hour, or maybe he doesn't need anything. He knows what he wants, and we need to be able to deliver that in his lunch break, not in 6 months into his tenure, and with 1.5 hour. Yes.
Exactly, and that what you saw there was built on the no-code platform. So I'm just going to skip to the next one, I think. There it is. This is complete digital holistic advice on all your asset classes, going from pensions to your savings to investments and your mortgages. Also built on the same no-code platform. Also simple to use. You'll get all the asset classes. You can change optimization through whether it's the one tax optimization or the other. And it's really simple to use. But this is all calling the Keylane APIs behind it. So even though it's simple to create, actually. The models behind it is very deterministic. And that actually also means, so here you can actually see we are looking at the different asset classes, and you can execute on it as well. You can also just say like, oh, now I want to talk to an advisor for 5 minutes. But as you're going to see right now, we also have all the numbers behind it. I think some Keylane people might actually know some of these numbers, right? It's all there. And that's like, you want that transparency in the deterministic models, but you want the customer interaction models to be able to move around. I think I'm gonna go down to the computer now.
You're gonna leave me here? Okay.
Yeah, so
that's fine.
For you to not like do like tennis, just look at Christian. He also has hair. And I will sit down with the computer and actually try to do some stuff.
All right, and what we're gonna start off is by showing the no-code platform, so where we can create something and where we have all the sort of API connections down to OBEX. To start off, I think you're going to build a very simple flow, so just showing you how it works. And I think part of it is, as Thomas said, we've been talking about this for a long time. There's many, many clever people that have thought about future-proof customer journeys and have very many good ideas. So trying to get that part into the hand of the business. Now we can see he's going to create a new flow. This is the dashboard, so we're not going to go into that today. And this is the canvas, so this is where the magic happens. I think he's going to do a simple one, so we're just going to do a regular message. Anything we're doing here, you can recognize from many other systems. What it does now is it also codes it. So once we're done, it is ready to implement. And do we just, yeah, one more, right? So, and because then you can see him connecting it. This does take some time. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take time. So what we have done is we have implemented some AIs as well. So we're going to show you that in just a second. But the AI never looks at the advice. It looks at building this. You're going to preview it. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a preview so people can actually see it. It's just going to do basic
so this
steps.
is what we've done right now.
Yeah.
But we've also done some home cooking. Correct, Simon? So this took roughly 2 hours to make.
Yeah,
and
is it all right if I go through it?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I'm just going to zoom out here. You can add, Christian, you're welcome to do that. Because what we thought was, what about looking at a mortgage calculation, saying how much is your equity in the mortgage, and is it maybe too much given where you're at in life, and maybe those money should be spent on an investment, and then say like, all right, so maybe we need to risk assess you in this one. So if you look at this, it starts out by actually asking what is the address. So I'm just going to switch to this one. We also did it in Keylane style, because never mind the front ends here, it can be anything you want. So we are going to put in, we actually can do my house, right? And I think you have some of the same things in Holland. So you can look up the public housing registry and see what mortgages are on there and what is the estimated price. And we do that out of the box here and we say like, that's cool. And then it gives me some sort of result. So your estimated LTV is at 62. Like this is the property value. This is the total debt based on your current. It looks like you're set. And that is very important because I actually get this message. If I had a different LTV, see that's made simple here, is less than 50, you would get a different message. So I'm just going to try to rerun this.
All right, now obviously any parameters can be set within the platform.
So what we see here is another house, and
That's our founder.
yes,
She's better off than Simon.
exactly. So she has a better LTV, 38%. All right. So welcome to the investment guide. Maybe you need to put your money somewhere else. No need to actually fight for paying off this mortgage that fast. And like, all right. So let's go to that. Let's press your risk appetite, and then we start all sorts of things, and we'll just stop it from here. All right. I'm gonna switch back to you, Christian.
Yeah, perfect. So again, that is an example of, and the way we can build fast is because we have these 4 different AIs that assist tool creation, the creation. So we have Build My Flow, which we're going to show you in just 1 second. We have Build My Front End, which is how we built the skinned it in the key lane style. Anything is obviously responsive. We're just showing you so it's easier to see on the desktop view. We have Build My Variable, so we can actually also, knowing if we want something like something that then calculates or sums up different risks based on questions, we can set values to that and we can make it code that within the platform as well. And then we have Check My Data, so we have an extra check on if anything is ready to publish once we do it. But I think Simon tried to show the when we built. So let's try to build, and
So here it is.
that's the Slack channel.
Yeah.
So let's try to build with
I'm just gonna go into this
a
and
new flow. Yes.
we take a new
Yeah,
flow.
take a new flow. Now we open the WizFlow Assistant, and this is part of where we can create some magic. So try to create an onboarding flow for pension.
Can anybody read it, or should I actually try to get a little closer?
No, you just write it, and I'll narrate.
Great.
It's fine. Create an onboarding flow for pension, and I think we have trained our AI, and this is the enhancer service of it, to then know a lot about this sector, right? So banking, finance, insurance, this is the magic wand. So try to click that. Now, based on a very simple prompt, it then tells us, this is what I think I would need for an onboarding for pension. And I get pretty impressed every time I see it, I have to say. Crazy times we live in. Obviously, I would always recommend to read it, because it does make very strange things sometimes, but 95% of this will be really, really nice. This is, now we're gonna put the prompt in and see to start building the flow. Now, based on our code, it then knows that the LLM, which can also be your own, so if you have one you're working with that is sort of hosted by you, we can use that as well. But now it's thinking about everything, the context around, okay, you wanted something about pensions, you gave me this very big prompt. Now I'm thinking about what entities I have, so all the entities we have in the system, and now we really hope it starts building, and now it luckily did, right? So obviously it is only as good as the internet connection you're on sometimes, but now it's starting to build these entities, and I think it's also starting to connect them now. So now it has built 29 entities. It has made a couple of triggers, so email triggers. And if you do, you can also convert PDFs, so actually reverse engineer from a PDF. If you do that, make sure that it can actually do the triggers. So our CTO ended up sending in a false claim, but don't tell it to him. But because he had an FDM travel, right? And it had the email in the bottom. And then he tested the flow and he was like, where did that go? Oh, it had taken that. So, yeah, I hope you'll forgive that. And let's see what we've built now, Simon. This is the flow. And
It's debugging,
it's debugging.
and now we're done.
And now we're done. So it took an estimated or completed in 87 seconds. And we can try to preview what we've seen here. And we're not going to go through the entire flow. Obviously, it has decided that we want to be very slow. Doesn't usually do that. Again, so every time we get something that is maybe 60 to 90% done, depending on the task, but then we can start to add upon that. And then if we have when we built for the financial sector, we will always have something that is locked. And then we could say, well, then if we want to onboard a CVR customer and there are only 50 employees, normally you would say, do I want to digitize that and have that specific policy in there? Well, now you can. Because you can say, it takes me 1 hour and 2 hours of testing, and now we can actually provide a specific flow for that CVR customer, as an example. All right, and I think you're getting the point now. So maybe, Simon, go back to how it is connected to this. And would you take that one?
Yeah. I don't think I need to do more on the computer, right?
What?
I don't think I need to do more on the computer.
No, I don't think so. You can come up.
Yeah, thank you. So, how it's built today is that we have some core systems out there. We are integrated very much with the OPEX services as well, and other services, and calling up public APIs, e-taxations, ID stuff, and things like that out of the box. And then the financial institutions using our software on top is having what you actually just saw. That also means that the ones that are using this and the OPEX services can change the coverage ratio that you want to recommend for your customers with a click, basically, all the way through the stack. So they can give this to the business people. They can, instead of creating the PowerPoints, they can actually make the user journeys in there. They can test them. They can figure out what works, what doesn't, actually push it away or run it through different channels, and they can put it out to the app or web or whatever digital front ends they actually have. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think for us, this is our best bit on a future-proof and so sort of a digital transformation that is not stuck within the PowerPoints or the PDFs, but actually gets into the hands of the business. And I think when we were really, really going at it back in our consultancy days, we were doing it in Figma, right? So we had an almost working prototype. Now you can take a prototype that is ready to deploy and put it in the hands of the ones who know the customers. And not least, compliance. Because what happens if you hard code stuff, then you come to compliance and they're like, no. Or you have very, very long processes in getting those things fixed. Now you can go and say, well, we understand you don't like this section. Let's change it together and save it, right? So I think for us, that's the future-proof part of it. But again, it's nothing without the
API
connection to a calculation, because there's still complicated stuff that you don't want to get wrong. So I think those combinations, having the agility and speed that we are all sort of impressed by and that everyone is expecting more and more, and then still having something that is auditable, activity logged on everything that we've done, and actually also able to, we're under the FCA's approval in terms of also being able to document exactly what guidance have you provided to anyone using the platform.
And I think actually it's worth mentioning, because there's a lot of front ends, and I don't think the Keylane people knows, but we have put the model we are using to optimize taxation-wise so the very deterministic model running on OPEX into Claude, so that you can actually do the advice It's not an advice because we cannot do that. But collecting the data, getting the feedback and things like that, but still do the calculation completely deterministic. So you can have the interaction as we know it through ChatGPT and things like that, but sticking to what we know calculation-wise. And that just shows the flexibility of the front ends.
Correct. And I think you can maybe play the final video, which is just basically Frederik solving his problem. Yeah, right? It's easy as that. But again, I think back to Thomas's point as well, I think a lot of the stuff that when we try to talk about digital transformation, we talk about being human-centric, we talk about being customer-centric, but we're still always thinking inside out. And what we get there is incremental change, and we don't get out in the real world into the headspace of the customers. And I think that part of it is saying from that to a clear life event in view on customers. Yeah.
I think that's it. We're going to stick around through the day. If anybody want to try build something.
If you want to build something in a break, we're more than happy to.
Yes. Let's see if you can break it. Yeah.
Maybe one question.
Yeah.
Is this limited to Denmark or is it applicable anywhere?
No, so a lot of the integration towards the public sector, they are of course coming out of Denmark. We have most of those integrations in Denmark, but then we're just gonna build some new ones, and all of the sudden, or some of the APIs the AIs can actually start building the APIs themselves towards the public sector APIs. It's amazing. We're running right now 1.3 million social security numbers and expecting to grow that a lot. So I really don't want to get stuck in Denmark. Yeah.
In Denmark, that's a lot.
Yeah. That's like half the grown population.
Yeah, but I think the way it then translates is also pretty amazing. I mean, I remember just actually even, I think 5 years ago, I paid a consultancy a lot of money to get a translation. And now it's like, it takes 1 minute, and then it has translated the entire flow. And obviously, again, please check. If we turn it into Dutch, we don't want to revise it, right? But you could.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your insight. Now it's time for a short break. We will have a break until 11:20. Please feel free to explore the marketplace, take some coffee, drinks. Be aware that the bell will ring 3 minutes before we have to be back, so that's your cue. 3 minutes, not 3.5, not 4. 3 minutes to be back. Okay? Good. Ja, det er EY, så er det dig, og så er det lunch. Lad mig lige se her. Ja, så EY der, og så er det dig. Yes.